Yo, what is going on? Welcome back to FaceTime one-on-one conversations in the beautiful game. I'm Ramsey Abushala, editor-in-chief of UrbanPitch.com. Our guest today is the founder of Breathe Futbol, one of the coolest brands in soccer. We featured him on Urban Pitch. He's been on the Urban Pitch podcast. Ebun Olaloye, what's going on, man? How we doing?
I'm doing well, man. Happy to be back here with you guys. Just coming down off the World Cup high, but feeling good and ready for to kind of get back into my regular, routine.
Yeah. Phone's blowing up still.
Yeah, man. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to put my D&D on right now. All right, we're good now.
Good.
Yeah, it's just been crazy since I had the Philadelphia Union were here earlier for a meeting today. Had a meeting into Miami, so now the MLS is back, kind of getting back into the swing of things with them. So it's been busy, but good.
Yeah, I mean it's the whole summer has been like a whirlwind. I can't there's a period of time where I didn't know what day it was. The whole World Cup thing was insane, but. You think that there's going to be a break now that it's over, but MLS is back in full swing. They're doing the whole, we'll take it from here campaign, and we just had the rivalry week. There's a bunch of other stuff going on, so it's like it you can kind of sit back and relax, but not really, right?
Yeah, which I love. I'm always on the go. I like constantly being in motion. I'm always thinking of what's next, how we can do what we're doing better. But it's just been amazing to see how many people are interested in football now in this country, things that we've all kind of been into for quite some time now. Everyone's starting to see just how amazing of a sport it is to follow and be a part of. I have friends that I went to school with who never cared for football, and now are asking me okay, so now that the World Cup's over, who do I support? What do I do? And I'm like, well, support your local MLS club. So it's been a really, really interesting time to be in this industry.
Right. Yeah. I feel like there's been a huge push for that. Support your local team, whether it's MLS, USL, even UPSL or a college team. I feel like that's been a big thing. When it comes to new fans to the game, I think fashion is another avenue into that. And I think the connection that soccer and fashion have together is a little bit different than other sports. And you can, I think there's a way that people can kind of get into the game through whether it's I really like this team's jerseys, or that lifestyle collection they did was really cool, and now I'm a fan of so and so. So I think that there's an interesting pathway there as well, in addition to the actual on pitch product.
Absolutely, you make a really good point. I think I kind of saw that way back when. I was like, look, I love this game so much. I have a crazy collection of kits, but I don't always want to wear a football kit. I'm like, how can I actually bring fashion to football? Because I think it's an interesting thing that happens where football influences culture, larger culture, as we're seeing with this World Cup. But then I think my question is, well, how do I make culture influence football? So it kind of becomes this sort of cyclical thing where I'm taking influences from outside of the sport itself and trying to bring them back into football. And I think it's an interesting way because then people who have those other cultural touch points now get to sort of tie back into football and go, oh, this is actually a football brand, or what's this about? It becomes their entry point, like you mentioned. And I think it's just an interesting exploration to see, well, how does that go? How do people receive what we're doing? People who are interested in fashion or just other things in general besides football, and then becoming a part of the sport.
Yeah, and I think the most recent, the World Cup capsule that you guys did with all the different national teams, that kind of tapped into that a little bit, where you're getting these varsity jackets, you have the button-down shirt, these maybe not typical or typically soccer related or football related pieces that are now they have the USA stars and stripes down them, or it's it got a distinctly Brazilian vibe to it. I think those pieces in specifically were really eye-catching, and I thought that, I mean, as usual, you guys really killed it with that whole line. What
Thank
was
you.
Yeah. What? How did you pick those certain pieces? And what because I know I want to talk about the motocross jacket. But there's so many different items that you guys have, and that's so different than what you normally see. How did you select those specific pieces for the World Cup collection?
Really good question. We've been working on that collection for so long. It's for over a year and a half now. I think for me it was just thinking about my influences growing up. and the pieces that I liked, and the pieces I didn't see really anyone else in our space and just in fashion in general really paying attention to. Because for me with LBF, the brand is really about wearability, right? Like it's one of our statements is for those who live life on their own terms, on and off the pitch. So like a lot of off the pitch, a lot of that's about what you wear off the pitch. And well, what's off the pitch? Well, it's at work, it's school, it's play, it's when you're going out with your friends, when you're chilling at home. So it's like, well, how do you make products that kind of fit in these different spaces? And for me, with the jackets, for example, we did a couple of varsity jackets for MLS clubs, and I was like, well, it kind of has become our calling card, because I think just the level of detail, craftsmanship that goes into a piece like that is hard to miss, right? I think it takes so much work that a lot of other brands don't want to touch it. So that's an entry point for me. I'm going, well, I want to try that, my hand at this. I want to make, a jacket that I saw rappers wear when I was growing up. When I was reading the Source magazine and Double XLs, like as a kid, I'm always, going through these pages, and like, they all wore Averex jackets and Peli Peli.
Yeah,
like, okay, well,
I was just about to say that Averex was like, it's
yeah,
like instant recall of those Averex
right.
jackets. Yeah,
right. Because I think as millennials, I don't know how old you are, but I think there's something about like our childhood that is, we all remember fondly, and I think we had quite a unique childhood where like hip hop was becoming like more global music. Everything was just sort of like crashing together at once. So I'm like, well, I have all these different, influences and things that I love from being a kid. I'm like, well, how do I kind of bring those things into this world that I'm trying to build effectively? Because me being a creative, LBF is just an extension of my creativity, everything that I see and I've sort of consumed over time. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. I'm like, okay, well, that's the varsity jackets. Then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm at the office and I want to rep Argentina, let's say, like, what do I want to wear, right? So it starts with these very simple questions, and I go, okay, well, I want to make a really cool rugby that anyone can wear to the office, whether or not you're a football fan or Argentina fan. It's just like a very clean piece of clothing. Because I think for us, like, it all starts and ends there. I'm like, okay, what is this wearable? Does somebody want to wear this? Whether or not they support this club or they're from this country, can I wear this and feel good in it? I think that's a really big part of being football fashion brand is like, okay, well, it has to be fashionable as well as have like football influences.
Yeah. Back like a year ago, we had our 200th episode, and we had like a varsity jacket that we had made for that that milestone, and just the amount of back and forth that we had to do and make sure all the little details, like whether it's the placement of the patches or the fonts or the logo size, like all that stuff, it was like, it almost took I thought we were giving us enough time. Like it was like 7 or 8 months before, and like the last 2 weeks were just like a sprint to make sure that we were able to get enough time for those to get put into production. So like the amount of details on the varsity jacket, like just there's so many avenues that you can go down, and I think you guys killed it with that. But going back to like it being wearable, I remember our last conversation we had, you mentioned the like the origins of LBF was like just having stuff to wear to pick up that you can wear like outside of pickup or afterwards, or like if a game of pickup just like comes up impromptu, you're ready to go, and you can like have that kind of dual versatility to what you're doing. And now you're starting to have like branch into like lifestyle and whether it's the rugbies or the camp collar shirts and all that. So how like it seems like a natural progression, but can you talk more about just being more lifestyle focused now and with some of your latest collections?
Yeah, that's it. I think it all has to do with me also getting older, and I think a lot of our audience also maturing. Like, I still play football, but my lifestyle is a bit different than it was even just 2 years ago, or even 5-10 years ago, where like I was going to class and I was going to pick up and back, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm in meetings, right? I'm traveling a lot, and I'm like, okay, well, what does my lifestyle look like now? And I think there's a level of also aspiration to this, and me thinking and just asking myself questions. I'm like, okay, well, how can we do something different that we haven't done or no one else is doing? How do we also challenge ourselves? You know what I mean? Like, I think I mentioned on the last interview we did that like Ralph Lauren is one of my favorite brands of all time. And effectively what makes Ralph Lauren one of the greatest brands, in my opinion, is just the breadth and depth of like what they do. You know what I mean? Like, they have home goods, they have like clothing for different occasions. They have like formal wear, they have casual wear, they have so many different things. And I think I aspire for LBF to be that, because you don't stop like loving football just because a game's not on, right? Like
Right.
I'm like, okay, how, if I say that if the brand is Live Breathe Football, I want football everywhere with me. Doesn't matter what I'm doing or where I'm at. And I wanted to sort of make garments that speak to that lifestyle, right? So it's not just, okay, hey, I'm going from home to play football. It's, well, I'm in an office 8 hours a day. I would love to be playing football now, but I'm not. So I'm playing, I'm going to still rep the game that I love. And it's just sort of thinking through, like, how do people actually live, literally lifestyle? How do they actually live on a day-to-day basis? And then try to make things for them to wear. Because for me, ultimately, whether you're on the field, in the stands, or just like walking by the stadium or anywhere else, I want you to be wearing LBF. Like, that's effectively what we're trying to solve for right now. But also realizing, like we mentioned earlier, is everyone has a different touch point into becoming a football fan. So, I remember a few years ago when PSG was like the team, everyone, every cool person was wearing a PSG kit. Then you ask them, well, what team do you support? They just support PSG by default because they like that kit, right? And I think, well, if you see an LBF jacket, let's say you saw the USA jacket or you saw the Brazil track jacket that we did, you might go, oh my God, that's so fire. I want that piece because I can see how dope that is. Oh wait, it's the Brazil national team. And you start kind of like, that becomes a thread you start pulling on to get involved in the game. So that, for me, that's one of the reasons like we're kind of going in that direction, because I'm like, well, somebody may not like a varsity jacket, may not be their style. They might want to be a rugby person or a camp collar person or shorts. And it's like, regardless of what the touch point is, I want to kind of grab people.
Yeah, it almost gives them an obligation to get into whatever team it is that they're wearing, right? Because it's like, I have this Brazil jacket, I might as well go for Brazil, and then you start paying attention to, Vinicius got a new chin, and like, like all the other stuff that's going on. But yeah, so I think the LBF purple label is something that I think we're all looking forward to, so we'll keep an eye out for that. But
I love that you mentioned that, because for me, like, my thing is always, how can we make this better? And I think there has to be some level of like differentiation between like our core product, and it's also the elevated pieces where, like, part of our conversation we've been having with clubs lately is, price point. I'm like, well, how do we elevate this for like our VIP, our suites, and our club members and all that kind of stuff? I'm like, okay, like there needs to be another tier that you just kind of feel like, okay, there's really, really great stuff you have here, but then there's like the extra premium, extra exclusive stuff, because I think everyone always loves something that stands out from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that you see that going both ways now, where like the big designer labels are now having like the entry level stuff, and like the other labels are introducing like the super premium lines, and just making it like the tiered system to where there's something for everybody. I think it's been cool to see over the last X amount of years in fashion and cars or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think price point is a big, it's just a reality of the market that we live in. It's like not everyone can afford a $350 varsity jacket, but they still want to participate in the story, in the brand. I think it's important to have things for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And then going back to like saying like the evolution of you, lined up with the evolution of the brand, right? Kind of reminded me of like when Jay-Z was going through like his whole grown man like raps, and he was saying how like, I don't wear throwbacks, I don't wear white tees, like, and had everybody wearing like the button downs and the ties, and like the creative rec era, like all that. And I think like having it feels very personal to you, the brand, right? Because I think you mentioned last time, and this is before the motorcycle jacket came out, was that you rode motorcycles, and that's something that you're into, and you were able to kind of combine the two interests that you had, football and motorcycles, and you create like something that no one has, at least that I've seen, has done before. And there's all these different brands and so much fanwear and teamwear that we were just talking about like the Fanatics Fest going on. Like there's a million different things that like Fanatics does specifically, but to you to create like something so personal where it bonds your two biggest loves, or I don't know if they're your biggest, but two of your biggest loves, and create something that cool, like that to me just stands out. So, and that's what makes LBF one of our favorite brands at Urban Pitch.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think for me is everything kind of starts from like a place of truth. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I like? What's influencing me at this point? And then I can start sort of creating products from that place. I think, you know, we all say like everyone's unique, right? I think part of what makes us all unique is like we all at different points in our life find things that we find interesting, that we become passionate about. Like, you know, I have two siblings, an older sister and a younger brother. We both grew up in the same household, right? None of them ride motorcycles except me. Like, they all have different passions, but we all effectively like consume the same things growing up. And I think this is what makes me unique. So why would I not like try to put those things together and see what comes from that? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, because in my brain, they're not that dissimilar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Football and riding bikes. I'm like, okay, well, to the general public, it might not be the same thing, but in my mind, it is. So I'm like, well, how do I combine this in a way that makes sense to someone seeing that? Is, okay, well, I ride motorcycles, I wear jackets all the time, so maybe if I have this motor jacket, people will see that like, oh, wow, like he's mixing in motorcycles. Maybe the guy who made this jacket like loves motorcycles and soccer, and I actually do. So it's like, not just like going from a place of trend or what's trending in the marketplace, but saying, okay, what do I actually like? What's speaking to me at this point in my life right now, and how to actually bring that into my work? Because I've ridden motorcycles for a long time, but I haven't always thought to like pull those two threads and kind of combine them together. So,
What point did it click to you to where like, oh, this could definitely be something I could do?
it was when we were working on our 2026 collection for MLS, and I was just, you know, like late 2024, you know, I'd gotten a new motorcycle, so I was really excited about riding that. And over the last couple of years, like, it just became more and more part of my identity. I do this thing called the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is like a big charity event all across the world. I do it here in Philly. So like, it became more and more about like, about my personality. I was like, oh man, like, wouldn't it be sick if I pulled up to like Subaru Park in like an LBF motor jacket? And like, that was like where the light bulb moment went on. I was like, okay, well, what does it actually look like if I bring that into, you know, 2025 MLS, 2026 MLS collection? And then that's kind of how I started exploring different, you know, different avenues. I think the motor jacket was like quite a very simple way to express those two things, you know, tying together.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. Like when you see it, like, oh yeah, like how has this not been done before? Like, you know, it works on like all levels, you know. But going into MLS, right? The return of the season, and the league is really looking to capitalize on, you know, World Cup fever and the new fandom that I think has been talked about on end for years now, right? Where it's like, you know, oh, soccer's this thing now, and you know, people are starting to get into it. But what like for the new fan that's getting into MLS, there's obviously its quirks. There's obviously, you know, the like what. To me, what makes it so fun and interesting is like like the differences that it has from you know, from other leagues around the world. But what would you say is like the most appealing thing about MLS to you?
I think that it's growing, and the fact that it's still quite new. And I think MLS has the opportunity to like write their own story the way they want to, and really define what, you know, top level football looks like in this country. And I think it's evolved so much, just even from when I started supporting, you know, the Union in 2010 when they came to Philadelphia and started really watching the league. It's like, just even from 96 when MLS was founded to now, like the league is vastly different, you know. And I think that's what really excites me about it, is just kind of see it keep growing and see it basically, you know, shaping the future of football in our country. Because in a lot of ways, you know, other European and South American leagues have existed for like 100+ years in a lot of situations. Yeah. And it's like, well, there's a lot of history there, and I think history is a really cool thing to have, to build upon. But I think when you don't have that, it's like, well, what's the story that we're going to tell now in a world that already, these other things already exist, right? So that is what excites me about MLS, and just how much the league is growing, how much it's changing, and how much we have an opportunity to also be part of that story in a small way. You know, I think back to those 90s starter jackets, you know, the Charlotte Hornets jacket that we all had as a kid, right? Like, and the NBA becoming like a cultural force in the 90s, right? Like, product is part of that story as well. You know, I think for us, it's like, okay, how do we become part of that growth process of soccer in America? So I think because MLS is growing, I think we have an opportunity to work with them in a way that perhaps was not quite possible, you know, another time before this.
Yeah, and I think like MLS doesn't have the nostalgia to rely on that a lot of the other leagues around the world have, but that can be a crutch, right? Where it's, how many throwback collections can you do before it starts to get repetitive? And I think MLS, like it looks back at its history for sure, and there's certain heritage releases that they've done, but they don't have the crutch to rely on, and it forces them to be creative in other ways. And I think that's something that we've seen work, and to varying levels, but it's exciting for sure. And when people try to look down upon MLS, I just tell them like, hey man, like this is what we have here, and it's not like be happy about it, but it's find the ways to support exciting things that are going on, and you can look down upon it and do all this and that and say that the European leagues are superior, but at the same time it's like there's a lot of storylines, a lot of happenings, a lot of community outreach programs that are going on that I think you don't really see in other leagues, and that's what makes MLS a lot more accessible than the Prem or La Liga and things like that.
Yeah, you make a really, really good point. Is when you have a clean slate, you can pretty much do anything. I think that can be scary, but also really exciting. I think for me, that's what makes what I do so exciting. I'm like, well, I have no idea what this could be. I have an idea of what I want it to be, but as I never really thought about licensing, and then when the opportunity came, I was like, oh wow, I get to create on a legit level. Because before I was just trying to make things that have the Union colors and hope Union fans would buy it, for example. But now that I have the license, I'm like, okay, there's so much more possibility now. And I think that's what makes MLS interesting. Is look, there are more people in this country who are not fans of MLS that you can convert to fans of MLS, right? And I think, I'm an Arsenal fan. Obviously, I didn't grow up in England, but there's people who are generations of Arsenal fans who've been fans for. So it's you were born into a certain house. It's well, I kind of have to support Arsenal because my dad is and my grandpa's an Arsenal fan. Well, if you're growing up in Philadelphia, it's okay, well, you can choose to be a Union fan. You can choose to be a fan of any team, really, and you can kind of start with the team. I think the Union's in year 15 or 16 now. It's okay, wow, I can start and grow with this team, so that when I do have my kid, he's going to be or she's going to be a Union fan, and then that becomes effectively I get to start that legacy of fandom versus just kind of joining it by default. I think that's a really, really exciting opportunity that MLS has that a lot of other leagues don't quite have.
Yeah, you could be the foundation for your family's fandom, and be the start of all the triumph, the trauma, everything that goes into sports fandom, right? You can be that. It'll all trace back to you, which is something you can't really say about anything else.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I don't want to keep you for too long. I know you got a million stuff going on, but what are you most looking forward to post World Cup in the U.S. When it comes to soccer?
I'm looking forward to the sustained energy. I was fortunate to go to a lot of games this World Cup. It was my first World Cup that I actually got to attend games. So I'm looking forward to that energy kind of carrying on, because people always say, oh, you saw the soccer thing in America earlier. I was like, no, I just lived it. You know what I mean? Even though it was quite small at the time, I was like, I lived this. I've seen, more money being poured into the sport here. So I'm looking forward to more people who are not passionate about the sport, who are curious about it, who are open to being fans of the sport, loving it. Because I think it's such a beautiful thing. We call it the beautiful game for a reason. And I just wanted to share with as many people as possible. And I'm happy that we had a World Cup here. We got to see how amazing this thing is, and hopefully they can kind of now become a part of it, support their local teams, whether that's at the MLS level, USL, EPSL, college, whatever it is. I want people to be more passionate about football, because I think it is the greatest game that we have, and I think it would be amazing for America to become more of a football nation than it currently is.
Yeah, wise words. And I think that's a shared sentiment with a lot of people that are passionate about the sport here in the U.S. And just, it's an exciting time to, welcome people in. And I've had more than a few friends that have hopped on, and, it's cool to be part of something like this. But where can we plug the line, plug the World Cup line, plug anything else that you got coming up in the pipeline?
Yeah, so, livebreathefutbol.com. You can check our World Cup stuff. We sell this stuff for USA, Argentina, Brazil. We also are, obviously MLS is back, so we have a license for Major League Soccer, so we have product for all 30 clubs on our website. You can go to Dick's Sporting Goods in your local Dick's Sporting Goods. If you're in an MLS market, you'll definitely see some LBF there. Also, you go to MLS game. Most clubs have LBF product in venue at the stadium. So, and obviously, if you can't get to any stadium, live breathefutbol.com, or also you can check out mlsstore.com as well for the product.
Bro, an official. You went official. I don't think you were did you get the license? I can't remember when we last spoke. It was like 23 or 24.
It was late 23. We had just done the Union collab. So we didn't have the license, but the Union collab went so well. The league offered us like a league-wide license. So that was pretty cool. It's been pretty much a whirlwind since then, just because, we've had to sort of grow our business, grow our team to just kind of meet the demand and the opportunity that was ahead of us, which was amazing. But, for me, I was like, finally we get this opportunity to really show our creativity on like a really high level. So, which I'm happy about.
Yeah. And you're planning stuff like 2-3 years in advance, like to kind of tie into what the league has going on too, right?
Yeah, not quite 2 years. I'd like to get to that cadence. We're probably about a year, 12 to 18 months out right now. Just because it takes so much time. We're doing cut and sew. We're developing all the products from scratch. So there's a lot of development time that goes into like a jacket, like what's behind me here. That's, just testing, making sure everything like is in line with our vision for the product and is meeting our quality standards. So about 12 to 18 months out.
Yeah, this isn't not your just basic screen print tees that we're talking about here now.
No. We started there, and I think it was a good entry point. But for me, I always wanted to be at this point, and even further. Like I want to do full lifestyle. I want to do home goods. I want to do like bags, hard goods, all of that stuff. So we're just like one step at a time. But I think we're in a really good place right now.
Yeah, for sure, man. Listen, Ebun, thank you again for taking the time to talk. We're always big fans of what you guys are doing. We're looking forward to the Purple Label. We're looking forward to the home goods. We're looking for the candles and all that stuff. So we're going global, and we're going all different levels. So thank you again, Ebun.
Love it.
We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, and thank you so much for, obviously, you guys have always been a fan of ours and supporting us and, telling our story in amazing and honest and authentic ways. So love what you guys are doing. Keep it up. I think outlets like what you guys do is super important for growing the game. I love that there's so many more people who are talking about the game and, giving us a platform to share our story as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. Thanks for tuning in to FaceTime. I'm Ramsey Abushala. That's Ebun Olaloye. We'll see you guys next time.